In this video, we are going to do something a little different. We are going to cover the State v. Derek Chauvin case. Hi, my name is Deborah Lelli. I am a criminal defense and immigration attorney here in Phoenix, Arizona. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on all upcoming videos. Let's get started. Derek Chauvin was indicted on 3 charges. The first charge is second-degree murder. The second-degree murder charges in the state of Minnesota consist of unintentionally killing someone while committing a felony act. In this case, the felony would be felony assault, and the state would have to prove that Derek Chauvin committed felony assault. Therefore, the state will have to prove that Chauvin intentionally inflicted harm to George Floyd. They would have to show that Chauvin wanted to hurt George Floyd as opposed to using a suppression hold. Third-degree murder has to do with deprived heart. Deprived heart is where you commit some sort of action and you knew there was a likelihood that somebody would die. Lastly, the second-degree manslaughter would require the state to prove that Chauvin acted with gross negligence, and they would also need to prove that Chauvin's suppression hold caused the death of George Floyd. The biggest issue in this case is going to be causation. The state has to prove that Derek Chauvin's actions caused the death of George Floyd. Today starts day 9 of the trial, and I'm going to talk about some of the key witnesses in the case so far. Courtney Ross was George Floyd's girlfriend, and the state brought her on to testify about their relationship. However, on cross by the defense, she testified about Floyd's behavior in the weeks leading up to the incident. Ross testified that they both used opioids and that they used to buy opioids from the street or sometimes get it from other people's prescriptions. Ross also describes an incident in March where she had to rush Floyd to the hospital. Here's some audio of her testimony.
He wasn't feeling good. His stomach really hurt. He was doubled over in pain. Just wasn't feeling well, and he said he had to go to the hospital, so I took him straight to the hospital.
You later learned that that was due to an overdose?
Yes.
A week prior to Floyd's death, Courtney Ross testifies that his behavior had begun to change and that she believed he was using drugs again. She testified being in the car with him when he went to purchase drugs from Morris Hall. Morris Hall was actually with George Floyd the day of his death. Hall refuses to testify, and the defense cannot actually compel him to testify because he has invoked his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and the right against self-incrimination. Hall is currently incarcerated and appeared at a hearing via Zoom with his attorney. His attorney argued that he will not testify because he has no immunity as to the day of the incident. The state is the only one who can give Hall immunity. However, at this point, they have not provided that. Why is Hall's testimony relevant, and why should he testify? Well, it's relevant because Courtney testified that a week prior to Floyd's death, she and Floyd had gone to see Hall. She remained in the vehicle, but Floyd went to purchase pills from him. Now, Courtney did not admit to actually seeing the interaction. However, she states that she does believe Floyd purchased the pills.
Would you agree with me that the FBI agents asked you from March to May if you continued to purchase those pills from the same source? Did they ask you that question?
They did.
And you responded, well, once in a while when we were desperate. Agreed?
That's what it says, yes.
Again, this testimony does not help the state's case as it goes to the causation. Another key witness was Mackenzie Anderson. Mackenzie Anderson is a forensic scientist. She was the crime scene lead in the case. During her testimony, she describes how her team processed the 2 vehicles, the patrol car and George Floyd's vehicle. She talks about the first time they processed the vehicles, which was May 27th, and the second time they processed the vehicles, which was about 6 months later. In her testimony, she talks about pills that she had seen in the vehicles. However, they were never collected because that is not what they were instructed to search for. In these images, there's photographs of a pill on the floor, photographs of a pill on the back seat. In the squad car, there was a pill photographed in the back seat, but it was not actually collected until the second time that the vehicle was searched. The half-chewed pill had traces of meth and fentanyl, and they discovered DNA of George Floyd. The prosecution also showed for the first time Derek Chauvin's body cam video. He gets out of his vehicle and attempts to help the two other officers as they are attempting to put George Floyd in the vehicle. While they're attempting to put George Floyd in the vehicle, you will hear him making comments in regards to not being able to breathe while still in the squad car.
Please, take a seat. Please, man, please. No, take a seat. I can't choke. I can't breathe longer. Please.
This again is something that goes to causation, as it proves that George Floyd had issues breathing prior to being restrained by Derek Chauvin. Another important part in the trial has been Officer King's body camera footage. His body camera footage was released, and it's a different angle, and it makes it seem like Officer Chauvin's knee is not on George Floyd's neck, but on George Floyd's shoulder or back area. Police Chief Arredondo had testified that Chauvin had violated several police department policies. Arredondo says there's an initial reasonableness in trying to just get him under control in the first few seconds. But once there was no longer any resistance, and clearly when he was no longer responsive and even motionless, to continue to apply that level of force to a person proned out, handcuffed behind their back, in no way, shape, or form is anything that is by policy. However, on cross-examination, the defense is able to get Chief Arredondo to admit that it appears that Derek Chauvin's knee is on George Floyd's shoulder blade and not his neck. Let's take a listen.
Agree that from the perspective of Officer King's body camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee was more on Mr. Floyd's shoulder blade.
Yes.
Then the defense attorney again is able to elicit the same testimony from the prosecution's expert.
Based on your observation of this photograph, it appears that the shin is coming from the top of the shoulder across the shoulder blade, correct?
Yes, sir.
Again, can you see what appears to be the placement of the leg of one of the officers at the shoulder blade of Mr. Floyd?
It appears so.
And again, here we have what appears to be the shin coming over the top of Mr. Floyd's shoulder blade.
That's what it appears.
Again, this is important because the defense is poking holes in the state's case. Remember that this is the state's case at this point, and the defense has not brought any of their witnesses. Testimony provided thus far is all obtained in cross-examination. Now, the cause of death is something that is also very important. The defense is trying to show that George Floyd's drug use contributed to his death. Thus, the causation lies more with the drug use instead of the suppression tactic. The doctor's leading theory of cardiac arrest was due to the oxygen deficiency. The defense here is going to want to show that the drug use can be a reason for the oxygen deficiency. A defense attorney's job is to poke holes in the state's case because the state has the burden of proof and must prove the elements of the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, we will hear the emergency doctor's testimony on cross.
Was your leading theory then for the cause of Mr. Floyd's cardiac arrest oxygen deficiency?
That was one of the more likely possibilities.
There are many things that cause hypoxia that would still be considered asphyxiation. Agreed?
Correct.
Drug use. Certain drugs can cause hypoxia. Agreed?
Yes.
Specifically fentanyl.
That's correct.
How about methamphetamine?
It can.
Combination of the two?
Yes.
The last witness we were going to talk about is Sergeant Stigger. Stigger's testimony during direct was that he analyzed the video and he determined that the suppression tactic was approximately 9 minutes and 29 seconds. During cross-examination, the defense attorney plays a short clip and tries to have the sergeant identify what he's hearing.
Tell me what Mr. Floyd says in this instance.
You hear what he said?
No, I couldn't make it out.
Does it sound like he says, I ate too many drugs? Listen again.
After playing the video a few times, the sergeant states that he cannot make out what George Floyd is saying. However, eventually he does admit to hearing George Floyd say he ate too many drugs. However, on redirect, the state at that point asked whether George Floyd was stating, I ain't doing no drugs, to which Sergeant agreed. As the trial continues, we will continue to cover the key witnesses. Most of the mainstream media is focused on the state's perspective, and that is why we've provided this short video on the defense perspective. Do you believe, based on the state's witnesses, that they are proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt? Or do you believe that the defense team is raising significant doubt? If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, leave us a comment and let us know. As always, if you'd like to set up a free consultation, give us a call at 602-456-1427. Thank you for watching, and until next time.